Been a while, my people, but we are back. Welcome once again to Omastruestories. The story you are about to watch is not a folktale but a true life story that happened not long ago in my neighborhood. Watch and learn from it in order to not make same mistake that Mama Zina and Oma made. The trauma in this story is not one to wish anyone, but, in the end, there's always a lesson to learn from. Happy viewing. Daniel lounged comfortably on the sleek leather sofa, a subtle smile playing at the corners of his mouth as he glanced around the luxurious apartment. This place was more than he had ever dreamed of, a gift from Mama Zina, who had been more than generous since they began their secret affair 3 years ago. It was their private sanctuary, far from the eyes of anyone who might recognize him or her. Mama Zina, sophisticated and alluring at 51, moved gracefully across the room, carrying a glass of wine. Her laugh was light and relaxed, free of the worries she so often voiced about her daughter's future. Here, with Daniel, she let her guard down. No one in her family knew about this side of her life, and she intended to keep it that way. Daniel admired her poise, appreciating the life she had introduced him to. This relationship had opened doors for him, leading to fine things and beautiful places he hadn't known before. For Mama Zina, he was an escape from routine expectations, a quiet thrill she indulged in with no regrets. They were simply two people sharing moments, enjoying each other's company, unburdened by questions or obligations. As days passed, Daniel became increasingly accustomed to the comforts and privileges of his life with Mama Zina. The apartment, which had once felt almost surreal, was now his everyday reality. Each morning he would wake up to the soft glow of sunlight spilling through the large windows, illuminating the carefully chosen decor that whispered of wealth and taste. Daniel reveled in the ease of it all, from the well-stocked kitchen to the closet filled with stylish clothes, gifts from Mama Zina, chosen meticulously to complement his look. Yet, Daniel was aware that the life he was living was a delicate balance, a thrill wrapped in secrecy. He and Mama Zina had crafted a world within walls, free from judgment, where they could enjoy each other's company without intrusion. Still, a lingering thought danced in the back of his mind. He knew very little about her personal life. She rarely spoke of her family, and he was careful not to pry. It was an unspoken rule. They both understood that curiosity could be a dangerous thing in a relationship built on discretion. Despite their connection, there were moments when Daniel sensed a hidden tension in Mama Zina. A look in her eyes, a distant thought behind her smile, almost as if she was fighting to keep two worlds separate. One evening, after a quiet dinner, as they sat side by side on the sofa, Daniel ventured a question. "You never really talk about your family, Mama Zina," he said lightly, watching her reaction closely. "Is it because you want to keep me all to yourself?" Mama Zina's smile was as elegant as ever, though a flicker of something unreadable passed over her face. "Oh, Daniel," she said, her tone playful but firm. "Some things are better left as they are. All you need to know is that I enjoy every moment I spend with you." Her response left Daniel feeling both flattered and curious. As much as he enjoyed their luxurious life, a part of him wondered about the world she kept hidden. It was a mystery that added a certain allure to their relationship, a puzzle he couldn't help but be drawn to, even if he knew better than to dig too deep. Mama Zina's home was as sophisticated and polished as the woman herself. Nestled in a quiet, upscale neighborhood, her house was a testament to years of hard work, taste, and an eye for elegance. It was a spacious residence with high ceilings, carefully chosen furniture, and art pieces that reflected her appreciation for refinement. Every corner seemed to hold a memory, a mark of Mama Zina's journey and resilience. Zina, her daughter, had recently returned to the house after completing her master's degree abroad. Though young, she already possessed a quiet confidence, one that Mama Zina was immensely proud of. Zina had her mother's poise, but a different kind of fire, an ambition that showed in the determined way she carried herself. With Mama Zina's support, she had just started her own company, a venture that was slowly taking root and shaping her into a businesswoman. One evening, the two women sat in the cozy sitting room, enjoying a glass of wine and catching up on Zina's day. Mama Zina watched her daughter with a mix of pride and motherly affection, seeing in Zina the reflection of her own dreams, only bolder and more defined. "So, Mama Zina began, her voice gentle yet teasing, you have this wonderful company, you're ambitious, you're brilliant. But tell me, when am I going to meet this charming prince of yours?" Zina laughed, a slight blush creeping onto her cheeks. "Mama, you and your questions," she replied, shaking her head. "I've been busy building the company, getting things in order. There hasn't been much time for charming princes." Mama Zina gave her an affectionate smile, not entirely convinced. "You're young, Zina. A beautiful, intelligent woman like you should have someone by her side. You have everything you need, don't let work be the only thing you care about." Zina looked thoughtful, her gaze drifting to the large windows where the evening light cast a warm glow over the room. "I know, Mama. But the right person will come along when the time is right," she said quietly. "For now, I'm happy focusing on my goals." Mama Zina reached over, giving her daughter's hand a reassuring squeeze. "I only want to see you happy, my dear. And if that charming prince does appear," she added with a mischievous twinkle, "I expect you to introduce him to me first." They both laughed, a comfortable silence settling between them. Though Zina wasn't ready to discuss her personal life, her mother's gentle encouragement was a reminder of the closeness they shared, a bond built on love, respect, and a shared understanding of the life they both dreamed of. Zina entered her mother's office, a sleek, professional space filled with tasteful furnishings and a large window overlooking the city. Mama Zina was seated at her desk, engrossed in a stack of paperwork, but her face lit up as she saw her daughter. Zina had stopped by to surprise her mother after running a few errands around town. They exchanged warm greetings, sharing a few moments of light conversation about Zina's day and her mother's work before Zina said goodbye and headed out. On her way home, Zina realized her car was low on fuel and decided to stop at a nearby petrol station. As she parked, a young man with a lively smile approached her car window. He was the station attendant, his uniform neat but simple, his face warm and friendly. "Full tank, right?" he teased, noticing her polished car and guessing her preference. Zina laughed, taken aback by his boldness and easygoing charm. They exchanged a few playful words, and before Zina knew it, they were laughing together, trading jokes and light-hearted comments. The young man, Joe, introduced himself, and they quickly found a natural connection. Despite their differences, there was an undeniable chemistry between them. Zina hadn't felt this kind of spontaneous excitement in a long time, and the thought of seeing him again lingered as she drove away from the station. Their brief encounter blossomed into a friendship, with Joe and Zina finding reasons to see each other whenever possible. They'd meet after Zina's work hours or sneak in a quick coffee whenever she was near the station. Soon enough, friendship turned into something deeper, and Joe became a meaningful part of Zina's life. When she finally invited him to meet her mother, she was filled with nervous anticipation, hoping Mama Zina would see Joe the way she did. However, Mama Zina's reaction was immediate and cold. She took one look at Joe, her eyes scanning his simple attire and noting the modest car he drove. After exchanging brief pleasantries, she pulled Zina aside, a disapproving frown on her face. "Zina," she began in a hushed but stern tone, "this boy isn't right for you. Look at him, a gas station worker. He doesn't even have an education, let alone a respectable career. How can you bring someone like him to me?" Zina's heart sank as she listened to her mother's harsh judgment. She tried to explain Joe's good qualities, his kindness, and the joy he brought her, but Mama Zina was unyielding. Her tone softened slightly, but the message was clear. "You're meant for more than this, Zina. I've worked too hard for you to end up with someone who can't match your ambitions. Despite her mother's rejection, Nnes continued to see Joe, finding solace in his easygoing nature and supportive presence. Yet, Mama Nnes's disapproval cast a shadow over their relationship, creating an unspoken tension that grew over time. The strain began to wear on Joe, who struggled with the idea of being deemed unworthy and not wanting to be a source of conflict for Nnes. One evening, after a heartfelt conversation, Joe told Nnes he couldn't continue. The rejection and judgment from her mother weighed too heavily on him, and he didn't want to be the cause of a rift in Nnes's life. Despite her pleas, he walked away, leaving Nnes heartbroken. She spent days mourning the loss of their relationship, her heart aching from the emptiness he left behind. Seeing her daughter's sadness, Mama Nnes comforted Nnes, urging her to focus on her future and assuring her that she'd eventually find someone worthy of her love. "You're destined for more, my dear. I know it hurts now, but trust me, you'll find someone better suited to your life," she said, hoping her words would ease Nnes's pain. Months had passed since Joe walked out of her life, and though the ache lingered, Nnes poured herself into her work. She'd buried the pain in a relentless schedule, focusing entirely on her growing company, the venture her mother had supported and encouraged from the very beginning. Each day was filled with meetings, strategy sessions, and late nights. Nnes was determined to make a name for herself and prove that she could succeed, a silent vow to her mother and to herself. Mama Nnes, ever the vigilant supporter, often checked in, offering not only advice but hands-on support. She was known to stop by Nnes's office unexpectedly, assessing progress and even holding occasional meetings on her behalf. Together, they made an effective team, each bringing their own strengths to the table. Mama Nnes's guidance was invaluable, but Nnes sometimes felt the silent expectation to meet her mother's high standards, pushing her to work even harder. Amid the busy days, Nnes's younger sister, Oma, visited from university. Oma was a burst of youthful energy and laughter, a stark contrast to Nnes's intense dedication. Though Oma came for only a short stay, her presence was refreshing, reminding Nnes of a lighter side of life. They shared late-night conversations and jokes, and for a while, Nnes felt the tension ease, her mind momentarily free from work. Soon, however, Nnes's routine resumed, and with it came a new possibility, a young man she met unexpectedly during a business event. This man, Kofi, was charming and ambitious, qualities that Nnes found both intriguing and refreshing. They began seeing each other discreetly, enjoying quiet dates that offered Nnes a much-needed reprieve from her hectic schedule. When Nnes finally introduced Kofi to her mother, her hopes were high. Kofi was educated, well-spoken, and had a respectable job, yet Mama Nnes's response was immediate and familiar. Though polite, her disapproval was unmistakable, her expectations for Nnes's partner unwavering. "Nnes," she said with a calm but final tone, "you deserve more. Don't settle for anyone who isn't willing to match our family standards." Nnes tried to reason with her, but Mama Nnes's resolve remained firm. The disappointment lingered, but Nnes reluctantly accepted her mother's wishes, ending the budding relationship with Kofi. While Nnes wrestled with her mother's expectations and her own dreams, Mama Nnes was finding her own balance in a hidden part of her life, the ongoing relationship she shared with Daniel. Their connection was one of thrill and luxury, a world far removed from her life as a mother and mentor. Daniel had been a part of her life for years, and though it was an affair kept in careful secrecy, it was one that she enjoyed deeply. Mama Nnes spared no expense in keeping Daniel happy and content. He had become accustomed to the luxury she provided, and she delighted in lavishing him with gifts, each one more extravagant than the last. One afternoon, she surprised him with the ultimate show of her affection, a brand new Jeep, a sleek, powerful car that symbolized not only her wealth but her commitment to keeping their relationship alive. Daniel's gratitude was visible, yet their connection went beyond material gifts. He brought her a sense of excitement that her daily routine could not provide, a thrill that kept her feeling youthful and vibrant. As Daniel adjusted to his new car and continued to enjoy his relationship with Mama Zina, Zina remained unaware of this hidden side of her mother's life. She continued to focus on her work, pushing through each day with the same determination, still aiming to meet her mother's expectations. Meanwhile, Mama Zina juggled her roles as mother, mentor, and lover, carefully balancing each part of her life with precision. One evening after a long day of work, Zina decided to treat herself to a quiet dinner at a cozy restaurant. As she sat enjoying her meal, she noticed a man across the room looking her way. He was tall, strikingly handsome, and seemed completely captivated by her presence. After a few moments, he walked over, introducing himself as Daniel, and offered to pay for her meal. Surprised yet flattered, Zina accepted his kind gesture, and they exchanged numbers before she left, both of them intrigued by the new connection. What started as a brief encounter quickly grew into a steady flow of text and phone calls. Daniel was charming and engaging, often making Zina laugh with his witty remarks. They spoke daily, and their conversations flowed effortlessly. She found herself looking forward to his calls, each one bringing her a bit more joy than the last. They shared personal stories, ambitions, and dreams, deepening the bond between them with each conversation. Although Zina felt herself falling for Daniel, she was hesitant to share the news with her mother. Mama Zina's past rejections of the men in her life loomed over her, and Zina feared what her mother would say. So, she kept this budding relationship to herself, deciding to nurture it in private. The secrecy added an exciting edge, making their connection feel even more intimate. Zina's mother noticed a change in her daughter. She seemed happier, more vibrant. When she would ask about Zina's day, Zina would often mention having a date or meeting someone for dinner, always keeping the details vague. Mama Zina grew curious, but she didn't press too hard, hoping Zina would open up when she was ready. Zina's world was filled with new excitement, her days brightened by the secret romance that she was slowly letting into her life. As their relationship blossomed, Zina began visiting Daniel at his apartment. The first time, she was nervous, unsure of what to expect, but Daniel made her feel at ease. His warmth and charm quickly turned their evenings together into cherished memories. With each visit, their connection deepened, eventually leading them to express their love physically, their bond growing stronger as they shared these intimate moments. They enjoyed countless dates, quiet nights in, and long conversations about life and the future. But Zina still hesitated to tell her mother and sister. She wanted to build a foundation with Daniel, ensuring that their relationship was solid and strong before revealing it to her family. Daniel respected her decision, understanding her need for time, and together they continued nurturing their connection, each day bringing them closer. Zina kept her relationship with Daniel a secret, waiting for the right moment to reveal it to her family. She envisioned a future where she could proudly introduce him to her mother and sister, knowing that what they had was real and lasting. She found herself imagining a life with Daniel, each day bringing new dreams and possibilities. Meanwhile, Mama Zina, sensing the joy in her daughter's life, grew increasingly curious but respected Zina's privacy. She watched as her daughter navigated this new happiness, feeling both pride and a touch of maternal worry. Unaware that the man bringing her daughter so much happiness was the same man she had been seeing herself, Mama Zina simply hoped that Zina's secrecy would soon fade. Zina and Daniel continued to meet, the secrecy adding a unique thrill to their relationship. Zina promised herself that once the time felt right, she would share her joy with her family. For now, she cherished these private moments, building a life with Daniel that felt both new and thrilling, hopeful for a future where her love could exist openly and without fear. Mama Zina had been planning a work trip to another city, a much-needed break from her routine. She decided to surprise Daniel by inviting him along, explaining that she would appreciate his company. Daniel readily agreed, thrilled at the chance to spend more time with Mama Zina away from prying eyes. Before they departed, Zina visited Daniel to spend some quality time, but Daniel informed her that he was planning to visit his mother in another state. Zina, unaware of the truth, wished him a good trip, feeling a pound of loneliness at the thought of missing him. As Mama Zina and Daniel traveled together, they enjoyed the luxury of their getaway, bonding over meals and moments that felt free from the constraints of secrecy. Meanwhile, Zina felt a sense of emptiness, unaware that her mother was away with the man she loves. When Daniel returned from the trip, Zina eagerly visited him, excited to rekindle their bond after his absence. He suggested they spend the weekend together at a hotel, wanting to give her a special treat. Zina, touched by his thoughtfulness, agreed without question, looking forward to the escape. Unbeknownst to Zina, Daniel had chosen the hotel to avoid any possibility of Mama Zina catching him with another woman. For him, this weekend was a careful balancing act to keep his secret life hidden, even as he showered Zina with affection and attention after their weekend. Mama Zina confronted Daniel. Her voice was tinged with irritation as she asked him where he had been all weekend. Daniel quickly crafted a lie, explaining he had been away due to unforeseen commitments. Despite her initial anger, Mama Zina, still deeply attached to Daniel, let her frustration slide, accepting his explanation. Returning home, Mama Zina noticed how happy Zina seemed. Her daughter's joy was palpable, and Mama Zina, though unaware of its source, felt proud of her daughter's newfound confidence. That evening, Zina decided to share her happiness with her mother. With a shy smile, she revealed that she had a new boyfriend and was planning to introduce him to the family the coming weekend. Mama Zina's heart skipped a beat, curious yet slightly apprehensive, unaware of the twist awaiting her. The day of the introduction finally arrived. Zina, brimming with excitement, prepared herself in her room, choosing a stunning outfit that reflected her joy. She glanced at her phone, smiling at Daniel's message confirming he was on his way. Unaware of the storm brewing, she eagerly imagined her mother's reaction to meeting the love of her life. Mama Zina, on the other hand, was in the living room, arranging flowers on the coffee table. She was curious about Zina's boyfriend not trusting her daughter's taste. She hadn't connected the dots between her lover. When the doorbell rang, Zina rushed to answer it. As she opened the door, there stood Daniel, looking sharp in a well-tailored suit, holding a bouquet of flowers. Zina pulled him in with a smile and led him into the living room to meet her mother. Mama Zina turned to greet Zina's guest, her eyes locking with Daniel's. The color drained from her face as recognition hit her like a bolt of lightning. Daniel's smile froze as he realized the magnitude of the moment. For a split second, the air in the room seemed to still. Zina, oblivious to the silent exchange, introduced them with pride. "Mama, this is Daniel, my boyfriend. Daniel, this is my mother." Her voice was filled with happiness, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. Mama Zina managed to compose herself, extending a trembling hand to Daniel. "Nice to meet you," she said, her voice carefully measured. Daniel, equally stunned, shook her hand, forcing a polite smile. Zina, misreading the tension, thought they were merely nervous about meeting each other. The dinner table was elegantly set, with candles casting a warm glow across the room. Zina sat beside Daniel, her excitement barely contained as she introduced him to her younger sister, Oma. Oma, fresh from her school break, entered the dining room with a bright smile. As her eyes fell on Daniel, she exclaimed, "Wow, Zina, he's so handsome." Daniel smiled politely, though a subtle tension lingered between him and Mama Zina. They all settled into dinner, but the atmosphere was unusually quiet. Oma, oblivious to the underlying dynamics, chatted animatedly about her time at school, occasionally directing playful questions at Daniel. Zina beamed with pride, holding Daniel's hand under the table, while Mama Zina avoided meeting Daniel's eyes, her movements deliberate and controlled. Halfway through dinner, Mama Zina excused herself, claiming she needed to check on something upstairs. As she reached her bedroom, the composure she had fought to maintain shattered. Silent tears streamed down her face as she grappled with the overwhelming emotions of betrayal, guilt, and heartbreak. After some time, Mama Zina composed herself and returned to the dining room, her face calm and unreadable. As dinner wrapped up, she bid Daniel goodbye with a measured smile, masking her turmoil. Zina walked him to the door, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing within her mother. After the dinner, Mama Zina sat alone in her bedroom, staring at nothing in particular. The weight of the situation pressed heavily on her chest. The two people she loved the most, her daughter and Daniel, were now caught in a web that could unravel everything she cherished. She fought back tears, her mind racing with conflicting emotions. Unable to bear the internal torment, Mama Zina decided to pay Daniel a visit. She needed answers and perhaps clarity on how to navigate the chaos that loomed over her. Grabbing her car keys, she left the house quietly, her determination masking her anxiety. Meanwhile, in Zina's room, she and Omas sat on the bed. Zina's face glowed with excitement as she recounted the evening to her sister. "It feels so good, Oma. For the first time, Mama didn't question me about someone I care about. She actually seemed okay with him," Zina said, smiling brightly. Oma, while nodding, felt an uneasy knot in her stomach but chose to mask it with supportive comments. Zina continued talking about Daniel, her eyes sparkling as she described how kind and charming he was. Oma listened quietly, her thoughts drifting to her own complicated feelings about Daniel. As Daniel drove home, his mind was a whirlwind of confusion. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his thoughts returning to the awkward dinner and the knowing looks exchanged between him and Mama Zina.
"What have I gotten myself into?"
he muttered to himself, shaking his head. Instead of heading straight home, Daniel decided to visit his best friend, Jide. He needed someone to talk to, someone who could make sense of the impossible situation he found himself in. Pulling into Jide's driveway, he sat in the car for a moment, trying to gather his thoughts before stepping out. At Jide's house, Daniel sat slumped on the couch, his face buried in his hands. Jide handed him a drink, his concerned gaze fixed on his friend. Daniel began narrating the entire situation, the unexpected encounter with Mama Zina at dinner, her reaction, and the complex web he'd woven around himself. Jide listened intently, occasionally shaking his head in disbelief. After hearing everything, Jide leaned back and said, "Look, Daniel, you've got yourself into a mess, but you can't lose focus. Mama Zina is the one who's been taking care of you. Apologize to her, reassure her, and keep her happy. Just play along until you figure out a way out of this." Daniel nodded, downing his drink. "You're right. I can't afford to upset her now." They continued drinking, and by the time Daniel left, he was tipsy, his mind swirling with alcohol and regret. As Daniel pulled into his driveway, he froze at the sight of Mama Zina's car parked outside. His heart sank as he realized she was waiting for him. Gulping down his panic, he stepped out of his car, his movements unsteady from the drinks. Mama Zina didn't even glance at him, she walked straight to his door, her expression unreadable. Daniel scrambled to open the door, his thoughts racing. The moment they stepped inside, he tried to explain, his words stumbling over each other. Mama Zina ignored his stammering, and in a moment of tension and emotional release, Daniel kissed her. Surprised but overwhelmed, she kissed him back. They moved toward the bedroom, their emotions driving them into a passionate encounter. Afterward, Mama Zina broke down in tears, guilt and confusion written all over her face. Daniel held her, his voice soft and convincing. "I love you. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. "You're the one I care about," he whispered. Mama Nnes's tears didn't stop, her heart torn between the love for her daughter and her feelings for Daniel. "But, Daniel, you've already involved her," she said through sobs. Daniel responded, "Leave that to me. I'll handle it." Yet, Mama Nnes remained conflicted, unsure whether to confess to Nnes and end the affair or to let things continue for her daughter's happiness. Mama Nnes returned home late that night, her heart heavy with confusion and guilt. She sat in her bedroom, staring blankly at the vanity mirror, replaying the evening in her mind. Her emotions were a chaotic mix of love for her daughter, a deep bond with Daniel, and the fear of everything unraveling. Deciding that confrontation would only escalate things, Mama Nnes resolved to remain calm and pretend everything was normal, at least for now. The next morning, Mama Nnes put on her usual sophisticated demeanor as she joined Nnes and Oma for breakfast. She engaged in casual conversations, asking Nnes about work and Oma about her studies. Internally, though, she couldn't shake the image of Daniel or the complex web of emotions that had formed around him. Meanwhile, Daniel continued to make Nnes feel special. He surprised her with thoughtful gestures, flowers delivered to her office, lunch dates at her favorite spots, and sweet late-night phone calls. Nnes, blissfully unaware of the hidden dynamics between her mother and Daniel, was happier than ever, believing she had finally found the one. One afternoon, Nnes confided in her sister Oma, telling her how lucky she felt to have Daniel. Oma, sitting on Nnes's bed, nodded politely, her mind racing with thoughts she dared not share. Oma had felt an unexplainable attraction to Daniel since their first meeting, but she pushed the feelings aside, knowing how much her sister cared for him. One evening, Daniel decided to surprise Nnes by showing up at her home unannounced with a bouquet of roses. However, Nnes wasn't home, and Oma was the only one there. Feeling awkward, Daniel decided to wait for Nnes. Oma invited him in and offered him a drink to pass the time. As they sat in the living room, sipping their drinks, their conversation flowed surprisingly easily. Oma found herself laughing at Daniel's witty remarks, and he, in turn, felt unexpectedly comfortable around her. As the hours passed and the alcohol dulled their inhibitions, the atmosphere between them grew more intimate. Before they knew it, one thing led to another, and the lines they shouldn't have crossed were crossed. When Daniel realized what had happened, he was overcome with guilt and shame. He hastily left the house, leaving Oma behind in a mix of relief and confusion. Oma, who had harbored feelings for Daniel, felt both regretful and strangely satisfied, unsure of what the future would hold. Weeks passed, and the atmosphere in the house grew increasingly tense. Mama Nnes, who had always been composed and encouraging, began snapping at Nnes over the smallest things. Nnes, puzzled by her mother's behavior, brushed it off as stress, especially since her mother had always seemed supportive of her relationship with Daniel. Nnes often talked about Daniel asking her mother when he might ask for her hand in marriage. Mama Nnes's responses became colder and more dismissive, leaving Nnes confused but still unaware of the underlying tension brewing beneath the surface. Oma began sneaking to visit Daniel. Their encounters became more frequent, and what started as guilt-ridden moments turned into passionate, secret meetings. Oma, caught between shame and desire, rationalized her actions by convincing herself that Nnes didn't need to know. Daniel, overwhelmed by the web of deceit he was weaving, found himself giving in to Oma's advances. Though guilt lingered after every encounter, he justified it by telling himself that his situation with Mama Nnes and Ama had no future. He only needed to navigate it until he figured out what to do next. Nnes, oblivious to the betrayals around her, continued to bask in her relationship with Daniel. She spent weekends at his apartment, cooking, laughing, and dreaming of the future. However, when she returned home, her mother scolded her for staying at a man's place without a proper commitment. Daniel, meanwhile, judged the chaos of his life, switching between Nnes, Oma, and Mama Nnes. Though he tried to keep his emotions in check, the thrill of being at the center of their lives clouded his judgment. He reassured himself that everything was under control. Mama Zina couldn't resist the pull of her feelings for Daniel. On several occasions, she visited him at his apartment, showering him with gifts and promising him a future full of luxury. Daniel, torn between his desires and the mess he had created, played along, trying to appease her and by assuring her he will always be there for her irrespective of Zina in the picture, while Mama Zina having no knowledge of Oma as well. But everything changed one fateful evening. Zina returned home unexpectedly early from work trip. She walked into the living room, where her mother was on the phone, which was on speakerphone, speaking intimately to someone. She couldn't make out the words and voice, but the tone sent chills down her spine. The moment her mother realized she was there standing and waiting to get her attention, she quickly cut off the phone, and the guilt written all over, she tried to wave it aside and asked, "Why are you home so early?" But Zina replied, "Was that Daniel you were talking to?" Mama Zina said, "Daniel? Of course not." But Zina, not fully convinced, decided to investigate further. Zina's suspicions grew each passing day. The warmth she had always felt from her mother seemed to have been replaced by an icy distance. The subtle glances, hushed phone calls, and strange behavior from her mother made Zina uneasy. Determined to find answers, she began piecing together bits of information, unaware of the storm she was about to walk into. One evening, after another heated argument with her mother, Zina packed a bag and stormed out of the house. She needed space, clarity, and time away from her mother's toxicity. With no other place in mind, she drove straight to Daniel's apartment. As Zina approached Daniel's driveway, she noticed a familiar car parked outside, Omas' car. Her heart raced as questions flooded her mind. Why was her sister at Daniel's place so late? Brushing aside the unease, she decided to confront whatever lay ahead inside the apartment. Oma sat nervously, tears streaming down her face. She had just told Daniel she was pregnant, and the tension in the room was palpable. Daniel, visibly shaken, tried to calm her down, but the weight of their predicament was unbearable. "Oma, I never wanted this to happen," he muttered, pacing the floor. Outside the door, Zina froze as she overheard the heated conversation. The mention of pregnancy made her stomach drop. Gathering courage, she knocked on the door. "Daniel, it's me," she called. The sudden knock startled both Daniel and Oma. Daniel opened the door, his face pale as he came face to face with Zina. Before he could say anything, Zina's eyes darted past him to see Oma sitting in tears inside. "Oma, what's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. Oma, with tears in her eyes, confessed everything. She told Zina about her relationship with Daniel and the pregnancy. The betrayal hit Zina like a thunderbolt. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed on the floor. Daniel rushed to catch her as Oma screamed for help. Zina was rushed to the hospital in Daniel's car. The tension was unbearable as Oma sat silently in the back seat, guilt consuming her. When they arrived, the doctors immediately attended to Zina while Daniel and Oma waited outside. Mama Zina arrived at the hospital shortly after receiving a call from the doctors. The look of concern on her face quickly turned to guilt when she spotted Oma and Daniel sitting awkwardly together. The doctor entered the room with a neutral expression. "Zina is fine," the doctor announced. "She fainted due to stress, and she's pregnant." The room fell silent. Zina's mother's face turned ashen as the reality of the situation sank in. Before anyone could fully process the news, Mama Zina cleared her throat. "There's something I need to share as well," she said hesitantly. All eyes turned to her. "I'm also pregnant. And it's Daniel's." The shock was palpable. Oma burst into tears while Zina, still weak, stared blankly at her mother. Daniel, unable to face the weight of his actions, abruptly left the room and vanished. Days turned into weeks, and there was no sign of Daniel. Despite their efforts to locate him, he seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Mama Zina, refusing to bring more shame to the family, asked the police to drop the case. The three women were now bound together by a shared tragedy. Zina, Oma, and Mama Zina, all heavily pregnant, tried to make sense of their lives. Conversations were strained, and the once happy household was now filled with an eerie silence. Each woman wrestled with her emotions, anger, shame, and confusion. The months dragged on, and the day of reckoning drew closer. Months later, the three women gave birth within days of each other. Zina had a baby boy, Oma had a girl, and Mama Zina had a son. The children, though innocent, were constant reminders of the betrayal that had shattered their family. Despite the pain, the three women found solace in their children. They leaned on each other, bound by an unspoken agreement to protect the next generation from the mistakes of the past. Daniel remained a ghost, his whereabouts unknown. The scandal became a whispered legend in their community, a cautionary tale about love, betrayal, and the tangled web of human relationships. Love, secrets, and betrayal can have far-reaching consequences that affect not just individuals but entire families. Transparency, honesty, and respect for boundaries are crucial in relationships to prevent emotional turmoil and lasting scars. Ultimately, healing and moving forward require acceptance, forgiveness, and a commitment to protecting future generations from repeating past mistakes. Thank you so very much for watching Omastruestories. Please, before you go, kindly click the share button, subscribe also, like and comment. I love you all and see you in our next drop.